A bit about examples of the marketplace or the place of the public exchange of ideas in the past, in the places that you studied and you worked with. And we can kind of start from there.
Okay, thank you, and good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Space is really important, and space can both constrain human action, but I'm an archaeologist, and we also can study space to try to learn something about societies in the past. And so how different societies use their public space and what kinds of activities are engaged in those public spaces is a critically important indicator of the nature of behavior in those different societies. Now, just as those parliaments, in terms of modern spaces, this is from a wonderful book that I happened to see a book review on in the Washington Post. And what it pointed out through these drawings is that you could tell a lot about the governance of each of those societies by the way their parliaments were laid out. So, for example, some of these cases like Egypt and the Congo, where there are a small number of seats at the front facing off against the rest of the population, that pattern tends to go much more with governments that are somewhat autocratic, authoritarian, whereas ones that are more rounded and where people have equivalent positions across the whole parliament space tend to go with more democratic or collective political formation. So space is really interesting, and I'm glad Noah borrowed the book and presented this. And this is something that we can, that's interesting in the ancient Mediterranean exhibit, which I have nothing individually to do with, except it's at the museum, in that some of the component societies that were part of the ancient Mediterranean at the time of focus for that exhibition, some of them were quite autocratic, as what Egypt was in those days as well, and some of them were more democratic, such as Athens, and so their interactions are part of the theme of that exhibit. So those are a couple of thoughts. I'll just start off. Hopefully that left Stacy something to chime in on.
Yeah, I mean, I think to tease out, so Stacy's our marketing director, and she looks at the public sphere now, how to impact the public sphere. And so I guess that's the question for you, Stacy. I mean, how do you see the field itself is, you have to buy a ticket to enter, but it's a public space. We consider ourselves a public institution. We position ourselves as a public institution in the city of Chicago that is a part of civic life. And as the person thinking about these kinds of things and how the museum positions itself in that way, and there's been a lot of research in that regard, how do you see the public? How do you see the modern polity, I guess, and then the field's relationship to that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So Gary and I, can you guys hear me? Okay, all right. Gary and I have had a few discussions on this, but how many people have been to the Field Museum? Okay, great. That's great. So I also, not only do I oversee advertising, but I oversee audience insight research with my partner, Dirk Patience, who really leads it. But what we know is that when people come to museums, it's very intimidating. You come in, you're sort of not sure where to go. A lot of, I should back up, 50% or 46% of the people that come to the museum are first-time visitors. And so you're walking into this gigantic building. There's parking, or over at the museum campus, you're going up these giant stairs, and then you come in and there's long lines and you have to wait in, and it's very, there's a lot of barriers to overcome. And then you get up to the counter and you're trying to figure out from a visitor standpoint of, well, what do I want to do? Like, what type of ticket package? So what we've talked a lot about is not only making it easier for people to get into the museum and making it a more enjoyable experience, but then once they're there, or even before they get there, really making sure people understand what the Field Museum's all about. So as the marketing director, I've been on task to educate people about our collection. We have a collection of over 30 million specimens and artifacts, and it's world-class, yet rarely people know about that even when you come into the museum. And then on top of that, we have over 150 scientists, including Gary, that work with these collections every day they're making new discoveries. So there's this idea that the museum, you go to a natural history museum where everything's dead, and people think, oh, we're just old, it's dusty, it's never changing. But in reality, there is so much amazing work taking place there. So when I came on board 2 years ago, we took a step back. We looked at our mission statement, and we're able to not only develop evolve our mission statement as far as this, we fuel a journey of discovery throughout time with nature and cultures, but then also look at our brand positioning. What is our point of difference versus other institutions, versus other activities? It's no longer just about museums. The Cubs, we're competing with people going to see the Cubs, which tonight is true too, which is wonderful. But I feel like it needs to be something that we think about ourselves as, to your point, we're here for the public. Our doors should be open for everybody, yet sometimes it's really intimidating for people to come in. And that might go to some of the structure of the building, like you were saying with some of these things too.
Yeah, I spent my whole life before I came to Chicago in the Field Museum as a public high school, university kind of guy. I was a high school student, a college student, a graduate student, and a professor at public universities for many years. And when I got to be a professor, somehow the students had to put up with me for 14 weeks and 28 lectures or so. And but I always enjoyed that experience. And so when I came to the field, and I really liked coming to the museum because now I get to talk to self-selecting publishers, people who actually are opting to come to the museum. But one of the things that always kind of troubled me is that so many of our visitors to the museum are one-time visitors. And they only come once a year, once every 5 years, even once every 10 years. And I thought, with all the issues that are floating around us about natural history and cultural history, wouldn't the field be a terrific place for people to have social relationships around and interactions with each other, as well as with the museum staff, about these kinds of issues? So maybe not 28 times, but a couple times a year. And so there are two kind of models that are dichotomous about museums. Museums as venue, like a stadium, you go there once a year, and museums as plazas, places where you go to interact with other people in your community. And hopefully we can, with Noah's help and Stacy's help, we can start moving the Field Museum a bit more in the direction of museum as plaza.
If I can interject for just a second, as a reminder, you guys are also welcome to be part of this plaza here. So if you do have questions or comments, please feel free to come up. We do want that exact kind of interaction that Gary was talking about with Stacy. I think I cut you off there.
Oh, no, that's right. Yep.
So something occurred to me as you were speaking, Stacy, that I think I'd like to hear Gary, but you shed some light on in terms of the past. We're thinking about our mission statement, so a single sentence that helps define our structure and our relationship to the world. And of course, we have countries have mission statements. Various forms of governments have mission statements and things like that. And so, just as we think about physical political structures, we can also think about verbal political structures. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what you've seen in your work about that kind of relationship between the formation of language and polity.
Well, I think that. I'm sorry. I think that there are a lot of connections to how people express themselves, whether through writing, through language, and it can tell you a lot about the cultural setting. There's no question about that. I think that as in those parliament buildings, the kind of dialogue you have is very different if you have 5 or 6 people or one person sitting at the front directing the process of discussion, or if you have a situation where people are sitting in more equal chairs. So I think the space of the conversation, the language of a conversation, the written system in terms of written communication can tell us a lot. And one thing I know is studying ancient writing systems is what different cultures, when they first started to write, wrote about, very, very much depending on the nature of those societies and what was important to them. So for example, I work in ancient Mexico, and the Maya wrote most of their texts about their rulers.